And to break down what's happening in West Asia, we have with us Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former senior diplomat who's joining us. Ambassador Trigunayat, thank you very much for being with us. How stable do you think Iran's internal political structure is at the current time?
Well, it is at the moment holding out, and I think that they had created sufficiently dispersed security architecture. As well as the political architecture, even in the past 8 months, as Khamenei himself was quite aware that he could be taken out any time. So we have seen that now a three-member interim council has been created, and there would be the experts committee that will decide and propose the name of the new head of state or the chairman or another Ayatollah.
Right.
We'll have to see who comes out eventually. A lot will depend on how the IRGC. At the same time, we have seen that their military architecture has also been quite diffused, and therefore the commanders have full knowledge of exactly what they have to do, fearing that the central command structure could go down. So I think that at the moment, there is no real threat, if we were to talk today, to the regime, because the regime has been institutionalized and is also supported by more than half of the Iranians. But of course, going forward, if there'll be more casualties, there'll be more difficulties, and there'll be more disruptions, then obviously this could swing. On the other hand, very often when the external interventions take place, people do get together. First, they want to sort out that problem and then eventually see how they will deal with their own differences. So everything is up in the air at the moment.
Indeed, Ambassador Trigunayat, also, how are Iran's relationships then with China, Russia and the EU evolving, and what leverage does Tehran currently hold?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, one has seen that except for statements coming out of everywhere, very little on the ground has been seen from China or Russia. Of course, President Putin has condemned the Iranian and Chinese relations have been extremely good. And with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, China's economic supplies of the energy supplies will also be interrupted. European Union is also a divided house. As you know, Spain refused to the US to use the bases from there. There are other countries who are not on board, but several of the countries like UK and France have joined, and they have also deployed their bunkers. But at the moment, I think the international community needs to gear up and try to bring down the tempers and get the cessation of hostilities at the earliest. It looks unlikely, given if we leave it to only 3 actors which are currently in the war. Of course, as you know, that Iran had also been hitting the US assets and bases in the Gulf.
Yes.
And that is something that has added a dangerous dimension to these. Perhaps their idea was that to impress upon all these countries to take it up with the United States, not to go. Of course, as you know, earlier they were all telling President Trump not to attack. But if you were to believe Rubio, who said that since Israel were determined to go attack and take out Khamenei, they had to join. Of course, they are retracting from that. So their goalposts have been changing, like they're shifting goalposts during the negotiations, which were almost nearing that place.
Right.
Now, today, President Trump is saying that if we had not attacked, then Iran could have attacked us. I mean those are the kind of things that are unbelievable and do not stand good to any reason or intelligence.
But Iran, of course, in the past and even to some extent now, projects power through its proxies and alliances, you know, Hezbollah, Houthis, militia in Iraq and Syria. How strong are these groups?
Well, I think, as you know, there are 4H is their proxies. One is Hamas, Hezbollah, Kataib Hezbollah, and Houthis. At the moment, Houthis are still in the play, and they can create more disruptions, especially in the Red Sea and Strait of Hormuz. And so navigation and economic distress, energy supplies, trade, all can be impacted by these. They still are there. They have also attacked some of the Israeli cities, the Houthis. As far as Hezbollah is concerned, for Hezbollah, basically, Ayatollah Khamenei was their spiritual and religious leader as well. So they want to take the to avenge his death, and they have once again started attacking. But I think that they have been quite decimated in their influence until unless, of course, there are the pitched battles with the Israelis, and then only they have some kind of leeway. But in terms of missile hitting and all, they can definitely 30 kilometers away is only
Right.
Israel from them, so they can create damage there. So they will definitely be supporting Iran. Because Iran is at the moment continuing with an attack, maybe somewhat reduced, but they're continuing with it. They still have some other drones and new kind of missiles. If they start using those, maybe they're keeping it for a later time. But if that could cause more damage. So we'll have to see how it evolves. But of course, United States is the hyperpower of the world, and they have tremendous capacities compared to Iran. But if you want to change regime, if you want to control the country, and want not this country to go into complete chaos, you need to have the boots on the ground, which I doubt very much the Americans will have that kind of a resolve.
Ambassador Trigunayat, what impact, has sanctions had, oil market fluctuations, the economic mismanagement, some would say, within Iran had on its economy? And is this also shaping public sentiment?
Well, surely. I mean, I think that Iran has been for decades under the severe sanctions. But despite those sanctions, it has continued to manage the affairs, which were, of course, in recent times had started telling a little more. And that's why we saw in December all those protests when Rial went for 6. And, we saw that how the people were very dissatisfied at the moment. I mean, of course, the regime was able to control. And more importantly, President Trump had said that he will support them. So this was being both internally, I I would say sui generis, or it was also being externally induced, as happened in many other countries. But of course, their people are unhappy. There is a great impact on their economy, on their purchasing power, on the inflation. But at this moment, I think most of the Iranians would be thinking whether their country will survive. And there are other things they can look at it later.
Also, what role does youth discontent if there are, after all, many of the protests are led by the youth, and also women's rights movements play in potential reform of Iran?
I think that Iranians had to undertake some of the reforms after Mahsa Amini's. If you remember, in 2022, the lady was killed, and since then the women can not compulsorily wearing the hijab or other things. So that was there very much. Women were more vocal also. They were allowed, because then the regime realized that they cannot completely control them to this way. And so they were gradually giving in. But as you know, this is a conservative regime. And the conservative regimes obviously will not give in, because then they will think that this will loosen their grip on the society. I mean, you remember that when Shah was there, he tried to liberalize to the extent, modernize, and that became his Waterloo, frankly. And eventually, because the country is divided quite a bit into the conservatives and those who want modernity.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former Ambassador of India. Thank you for putting that into context.